When you're struggling in Hollywood and someone offers you a role, any role, you say yes. That's how Van Damme ended up in Monaco forever, playing a gay karate master. The film tanked, but it led to Chuck Norris bringing him on as a sparring partner and stunt double for Missing in Action. That connection got him inside Cannon Films, the studio Chuck helped run, where Jean-Claude started schmoozing and campaigning for roles like his life depended on it, because it did. He even shows up in the background of Breakin', Cannon's breakdance cult hit. Van Damme swears he did one of his famous splits in the background, but the cruel director cut it. Still, it was something. At the same time, his personal life was just as wild. He married for the second time, landing a cushy job at his father-in-law's construction company. It was here he picked up some Russian curse words which, strangely enough, would come in handy for his next big break. His first real role was in No Retreat, No Surrender, where he played a Soviet villain. The set was chaotic. Actors improvised, and Van Damme went full martial arts mode, hitting his co-stars way too hard. They were actors. He was a fighter. The bruises were real, and at least one person ended up in a hospital. Chuck Norris, it seems, had trained him a little too well, but Van Damme didn't care. He was finally being noticed. That movie caught enough attention to get him cast in Bloodsport, a film that would define his career. But before Bloodsport could launch him to stardom, he had a short detour, almost literally. At one point, he was briefly hired to play the Predator in the original Predator film, but there were problems. First, he passed out from heat exhaustion inside the suit. Second, he didn't realize the costume would cover his face, a major problem for someone trying to get recognized. Third, he looked tiny next to Schwarzenegger, which killed the vibe. He was quickly replaced. Back to Bloodsport. The movie sat on the shelf for 2 years. Cannon didn't like it. It looked cheap, the story didn't land, and no one was happy. Van Damme begged them to let him re-edit it. They gave in, and he spent months reshaping the film, tightening scenes, fixing the pace, and making sure every split and spin kick hit just right. The gamble paid off. Bloodsport earned $11 million on a $1 million budget. Critics hated it. The audience loved it. Cannon Films realized Van Damme wasn't just a stunt guy, he was their new golden goose. And just like that, Jean-Claude Van Damme became a legitimate action star. But the climb had only just begun. Jean-Claude became Chuck Norris's sparring partner. Then Chuck gave him a shot as a stunt double in Missing in Action. It wasn't a leading role, but it was a foot in the door. And that door led to Cannon Films, a scrappy little studio that made grindhouse movies and somehow launched big careers. Van Damme wasn't shy. He showed up at Cannon's studio lot, pitched himself to anyone who'd listen, and practically begged for a shot. He even landed in Breakin', their big breakdance flick. You have to squint, but you'll see him dancing in the background, probably trying to sneak in a split. He swore he did one, but the director cruelly cut it. While hustling for screen time, Jean-Claude's personal life was going full soap opera. He got married again, landed a management job at his father-in-law's construction firm, and picked up Russian swear words from the job site. Strange as it sounds, those curse words helped land his next role playing a Russian villain in No Retreat, No Surrender. That movie was wild. There was no script, just vibes. Everyone was improvising. But Van Damme, he thought he was still in the ring. He kicked like it was a real fight. The actors got bruised. One ended up in the hospital. Jean-Claude didn't understand the difference between sparring and acting, or maybe he just didn't care. But it worked. People noticed him. He wasn't just another martial artist. He had a presence. That caught the attention of producers behind Bloodsport, a film that would become his breakout. But hold on, there was one more bizarre detour. Van Damme was briefly cast as the original Predator. Yes, the alien, it didn't last. He fainted in the heat of the costume. He was furious that no one could see his face. And when they filmed him next to Arnold Schwarzenegger, it was awkward. Jean-Claude looked like a toy soldier next to a tank. He was replaced. Bloodsport, on the other hand, was a passion project. Based on supposedly real events, it had everything: underground fights, slow motion screams, dramatic revenge arcs. But Cannon hated the final cut. They shelved it for 2 years. It was rough. So Van Damme asked to re-edit it, not as an actor, as an editor. He spent months cutting scenes, tightening action, and perfecting pacing. He turned a disaster into a sleeper hit. Bloodsport made $11 million on a $1 million budget. Critics trashed it. Fans made it a cult classic. Van Damme had arrived, and not through hype or luck, but through sheer obsession. The Muscles from Brussels was no longer just a nickname. It was a headline. After Bloodsport, Jean-Claude Van Damme wasn't just a name anymore, he was a brand. A walking, spinning, high-kicking brand with legs that did the talking. And the momentum didn't stop there. He jumped straight into Black Eagle, playing another Soviet villain opposite action star show Kosagi. It wasn't a blockbuster, but Van Damme's on-screen beatdowns were gaining attention. Audiences loved watching him get brutalized, only to rise and serve perfect revenge, dramatic, slow motion, and painfully satisfying. But behind the flying kicks, a pattern was emerging. Jean-Claude didn't just act in these movies, he controlled them. During Black Eagle, he reportedly refused to film a scene where his character dies. Not because he was scared of the action, but because he knew one wrong move and he'd be typecast forever the bad guy, always losing in the end. Smart move. Nobody remembers the movie, but Bloodsport stayed iconic. Van Damme's instincts were sharp, and they saved him again. Bloodsport had been collecting dust for nearly 2 years before he stepped in and re-edited it. His cuts turned it into a cult smash. The film grossed 11 times its budget. It saved Canon Pictures from financial collapse. The same thing happened with Cyborg, a film stitched together using leftover sets from failed Spider-Man and Masters of the Universe projects. No budget, a broken camera, and a looming deadline. It bombed in test screenings. So what did Van Damme do? He edited it himself again. Canon trusted him more than their own editors. The film ended up grossing $10 million off a $500,000 budget. It didn't just earn back money. It reinforced a myth. When Van Damme edits, magic happens. But the chaos was brewing. On the set of Cyborg, he accidentally injured a fellow actor's eye. Word spread fast. Former co-stars from No Retreat, No Surrender started coming forward. Jean-Claude was too aggressive, too intense. The lawsuits came next. One actor sued him for over $10,000. And that was probably just the beginning. Still, his star was rising. His next film, Kickboxer, had a bigger budget of $1.5 million. Van Damme choreographed every fight scene himself, down to the last knee strike. And it was in Kickboxer that he started what fans would call the Glut era. Yes, he began showcasing his, but in dramatic fashion, and this trend flourished in nearly every film that followed. Critics rolled their eyes. They called him a hillbilly Schwarzenegger. But Kickboxer grossed $15 million just in the U.S. Fans didn't care what the critics said. They just wanted more Van Damme. And he delivered. Lionheart, Death Warrant, Double Impact, Universal Soldier, each film made more than the last. The roles got bigger. The studios got better. The budgets? Massive. He was no longer just a martial arts guy. He was a movie star. Lionheart was a gamble. Van Damme wrote the concept himself. No script, no plan, just a promise to deliver. And he did. It was a hit. Death Warrant suffered from Canon's collapse, but still made money. Double Impact was a game-changer. Van Damme played twins. 2 characters, 2 personalities. And audiences loved it. Suddenly, Jean-Claude wasn't just punching people. He was acting. Kind of. Then came Universal Soldier, his biggest, most mainstream film yet. The studio promoted it like a summer tentpole. Red carpet appearances, press tours, marketing stunts. Van Damme went all in. At the Cannes Film Festival, he and co-star Dolph Lundgren staged a fake fight on the red carpet. Cameras flashed. Headlines exploded. It was fake beef but real genius. Viral before viral was even a thing. But with success came a shift. Van Damme wasn't just an actor anymore. He was a show, and he wanted more control. That became clear with Nowhere to Run. Originally a dramatic film meant for Mel Gibson, no action, just story. But when Van Damme signed on, everything changed. He brought in a new screenwriter, added fight scenes, and turned the quiet drama into a punch-heavy thriller. The original writer, Joe Esterhaas, was so furious he disowned the film. Van Damme, on the other hand, cashed a $2.5 million paycheck, his biggest yet. Then came Hard Target. Van Damme was undressing so often. Director John Woo had to cut scenes just to keep the rating under control. 7 re-edits later, Jean-Claude still wasn't satisfied. He wanted to take over in the editing room again. But this time, producer Sam Raimi stepped in and said no. Woo's vision stood. And despite all the behind-the-scenes drama, the movie grossed $74 million on an $18 million budget. Van Damme was flying, and everyone thought the best was yet to come. But that belief would soon crash headfirst into reality. Even Jean-Claude couldn't spin kick away. By the late 90s, the muscles from Brussels weren't enough to carry a movie anymore. Jean-Claude Van Damme's films had lost their magic. The once rising star found himself free-falling through Hollywood's ranks. What followed wasn't just a rough patch. It was a full-blown collapse. Blockbusters turned into low-budget B-movies. Studio deals disappeared. Critics stopped paying attention. It started with Double Team, a flashy, chaotic buddy flick co-starring Dennis Rodman and Mickey Rourke. On paper, it had potential. Big stunts, global appeal, a wild cast. In reality, it was a train wreck. Rodman won a Razzie. Critics laughed. Audiences stayed home. Columbia Pictures had gambled on Van Damme, and they lost. Next came Knockoff, where Van Damme teamed up with Rob Schneider. Yes, really, a blend of goofy humor and action that confused everyone. Sony gave a shot. It flopped hard. After that, nobody wanted to touch him. The action icon who once redefined cinematic fight scenes was now pumping out straight-to-video titles derailed. The Order Replicant. Forget theater premieres. These are showing up in bargain bins. And it wasn't just the industry that turned its back. Some of Van Damme's old martial arts peers started throwing shade. A few even challenged him to real fights. He declined wisely. He knew it wouldn't prove anything. One story from this era still lives in Hollywood legend. At a party hosted by Sylvester Stallone, Steven Seagal, another martial arts star with an ego the size of a freight train, allegedly mocked Van Damme's fighting skills. Jean-Claude, never one to back down, challenged him to a real fight. Seagal refused. So Van Damme followed him to a second location, a nightclub, and challenged him again. Still no fight. But the message was clear. Jean-Claude may have been losing the box office battle, but the fighter in him was still alive. Then came what he called the moment everything changed. Van Damme claimed Universal offered him a deal for 3 films, $12 million each. Unverified, but he says he turned it down. That, he insists, was a final nail in the coffin. Whether it's true or not, what is true is that the studios stopped calling. His reputation for wild behavior, drug use, and on-set drama had spread. Producers saw him as toxic. In the early 2000s, his movies stopped getting theatrical releases in the U.S. Some were shelved. Others quietly slipped onto DVD. And then came the bar fight rumors of alleged brawls with bodyguards, ex-wives, nightclub security. Nothing was ever confirmed. But in Hollywood, perception is reality. And Van Damme's reality was falling apart. But something deep was going on. Around this time, Jean-Claude revealed he had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He spoke honestly about the highs and lows, the mania, the depression, the unpredictable behavior that made him difficult to work with. He said there were days he felt like the kindest man alive, and other days, even he couldn't stand himself. That diagnosis explained a lot. The erratic behavior, the self-sabotage, the rise and fall. He wasn't just difficult. He was struggling. But even in the rubble of his career, Van Damme wasn't done. In 2008, he released JCVD, a French-language film where he played a fictionalized version of himself. Not the action hero, not the legend, but a broken man is tired, broke, desperate, and human. There's one scene in a monologue where Van Damme looks directly into the camera and pours his heart out. No fighting, no splits, just raw emotion. Critics were floored. Time magazine said that if Heath Ledger hadn't delivered his legendary Joker performance that year, Van Damme might have deserved an Oscar. For 7 minutes, he reminded the world that behind the spin kicks was a real person, damaged, reflective, and finally honest. But the film didn't perform at the box office. Why? Van Damme didn't promote it. His beloved dog, Scarface, had gone into sudden clinical death the week of the premiere. Instead of walking red carpets, Van Damme stayed home to care for him. He said it was the hardest decision, but also the right one. And then, almost as if karma kept receipts, fate gave him another chance. Stallone, the same friend who watched the Seagal showdown, called him again. The Expendables 2 needed a villain. Van Damme said yes. This time, there was no drama. He showed up ready, focused, professional. The film was a hit, over $300 million worldwide. Critics praised Van Damme. Some even said his performance outshone Stallone, Statham, and the rest of the action hero gang. For the first time in a decade, Jean-Claude Van Damme was back in theaters. And audiences, they remembered why they loved him in the first place. It wasn't just about the kicks. It was about the comeback. The Expendables 2 wasn't a full-blown Van Damme comeback, but it was a spark, a glimmer that the once-forgotten action star could still set the screen on fire when given the chance. Critics called the performance the best in the movie. Fans loved seeing him again. And for a moment, It felt like Jean-Claude was back not just as a meme or a memory, but as a genuine cinematic force. But the magic faded quickly. There was no blockbuster follow-up, no new franchise, no Hollywood studio rushing to give him the reins of a $100 million tentpole. Van Damme wasn't back. He was simply remembered. And in a strange way, that was enough for him. Instead of desperately clawing for relevance, Jean-Claude pivoted. He embraced the absurdity of his career. He leaned into the nostalgia, the memes, the myth of who he was, and started having fun with it, like the viral Volvo commercial, where he performed a full split between two moving trucks. Perfect form, total control, millions of views. And just like that, the internet remembered why they loved him. Then came Jean-Claude Van Johnson, an Amazon Prime series where he played a fictionalized version of himself, a retired action star turned secret agent. It was ridiculous, self-aware, and brilliantly on-brand. Critics gave it a thumbs up. Fans appreciated the wink-wink humor. But the show was canceled after one season. Still, it proved something. Van Damme wasn't on the joke. He'd evolved from action god to cult icon, and he was okay with that. Behind the scenes, a different transformation was taking place. Jean-Claude wasn't trying to be everywhere anymore. He traded film sets for family dinners, red carpets for quiet mornings. He remarried Gladys Portugues, the woman he divorced twice before. His third wife became his fifth. And in interviews, he called her the only one who truly understood him, the only one who stuck around when the lights went dim. Together, they rebuilt the kind of peace that Hollywood had stolen from him. And Van Damme started talking, really talking. He opened up about his bipolar disorder, his drug addiction, the years he spent sabotaging his own success. He admitted he was insecure, that fame scared him, that he was chasing something he couldn't even define. He even laughed about his editing obsession and how he once believed that if he could just get into the editing room, he could fix anything, not just a movie, but his whole life. But life isn't film. There's no final cut, no perfect take. And Van Damme learned that the hard way. His legacy is messy. A wild mix of cult classics, terrible sequels, forgotten flops, courtroom drama, stunt injuries, and viral glory. But it's also a legacy of perseverance. He built a career with no connections, no powerful backers, no safety net. Just talent, obsession, and a work ethic forged in failure. He got rejected on TV, got kicked off sets, got blacklisted, got laughed at, and somehow he still made it. Because Jean-Claude Van Damme wasn't built for the easy path. He was built for the comeback. And even when the spotlight dimmed, he didn't chase it with desperation. He let it go, and in doing so, he found something rare, peace. Today, Van Damme isn't front page news. He's not on the summer movie poster, but he's still here, training, meditating, traveling. Sometimes he pops up in foreign projects, sometimes in internet sketches, but he's no longer chasing the next big thing. He's just living, and maybe that's the point. For a man who spent decades trying to prove himself, to impress studios, critics, and fans. Now, finally, he seemed content just being him. The man who once did splits across chairs on live TV. The man who re-edited his own movie to save a studio. The man who challenged Seagal at a party. Stayed by his dying dog's side instead of promoting his comeback, and still showed up when Stallone called. Jean-Claude Van Damme was never just an actor. He was a fighter, in every sense of the word. Not every hit landed. Not every film worked. Not every decision was smart. But he kept showing up. And in an industry that chews people up and forgets their names, that persistence, that refusal to quit might be his greatest performance of all.